Hello. All right, so today we're interviewing Bruce Poynter. Did I pronounce it right?
Yes, Bruce Poynter. Mm-hmm.
Watch your nose.
Okay.
Take one.
All right.
Okay. Do I have your permission to take this interview?
Yes, you do.
Bruce, where do your ancestors come from?
Originally European, and then Indianapolis, Indiana, and Upper Sandusky, Ohio. Mother and father, families of 10 and 11 each, farm families. And I was born in 1948, September 25th, and moved to Southern California, Pomona, in 1958.
Now, why did you come to Pomona?
My dad took a job with my uncle. My uncle was in real estate and the theater business, and my dad came here to help him run those businesses.
So your dad came, so your whole family came, or just your dad?
A whole family,
Okay.
yeah.
And you moved to Pomona,
Mm-hmm.
and you were managing the movie theaters?
Yeah, I managed one of the theaters. First, I went to, I graduated in '66 from Pomona High School. '67, went in the military, Altus Air Force Base, Oklahoma. '68, I was in Van Rang, Vietnam. My base had a record number, the record for rocket and mortar attacks, Second Tet Offensive at Van Rang.
How many was that?
Pardon?
How many was that?
126, and rocket and mortars. And then I was discharged in '71, and then in I went back to, when I went back stateside, it was March Air Force Base. And then when I was discharged, I went to, started at the drive-in movie theater as a manager for 2 years.
Now, you told me that when you went into the Air Force, that your main function there was firefighting at that point?
Correct. It was called crash rescue firefighting. We were the guys that run out in the giant trucks and spray water and foam and try to get the pilots out and try to put the aircraft fires out before the munitions cooked off. And pilot rescue and saving the aircraft was our primary mission.
Pilot rescue and saving the aircraft.
Right.
So you use mostly firefighting technique?
Yeah. And back then, what's different than city firefighters, we had what's called aluminized asbestos suits. It looks like a space suit. It looks like a moonwalk suit. And that would protect us against intense heat and flame while we're trying to remove the pilots.
What did you have on your head and your face? Did you have?
Yeah, it was a full, I actually have a picture of it at home. It was a full headgear. You say helmet, but it goes all the way down over the shoulders and it overlaps everything else. So it was a pretty interesting outfit.
Now, when you would go out, did you wear those out when you went out, or you had to put that on when you saw the situation required?
Well, it depends. Usually, most of the aircraft, you have to be out there in 60 seconds to 3 minutes because the JP-4 would cook off the aircraft real fast. And so we had like a 3-minute time. So we usually had what we call our bunker gear on, usually had that stuff on as we were in the truck and approaching the fire.
How many people would be in the truck?
4 or 5, and it depends. When we were under attack, we had 2 of us had M16s. One hose man, one rescue man, one turret man, and 2 M16s in the back.
Wow.
Exciting for a 19-year-old.
So when you came back, you joined with your uncle. Was he your uncle?
Yeah, my dad and my uncle had the Mount Vernon Drive-In in San Bernardino. I managed that for 2 years, and I decided I'm an outdoors guy, and that's what brought me to Palm Desert and Indio to begin with. I love the outdoors, dirt bikes, fishing, hiking, and all that kind of stuff. So I left the theater. I saw a little ad, City of Indio, firefighter wanted, $760 a month, and I was hired on September 4th of '73.
So you moved, when you were hired, then you moved out here? Or
Yes,
okay.
yeah.
And did you move to the fire station in India?
No, I moved to an apartment complex, then I bought a home there. Worked there, 4 years military fire department, 16 years civilian fire department, and then I injured my back. And when I got out, I ended up working in tourism, jeep tours, hiking tours, bus tours, all kinds of stuff. Basically showing the natural features around Indio and Palm Desert, the Coachella Valley.
I want to hear about that, but I want this story about how you injured your back is.
The pedestrian hit by a car, big guy, and slipped, went right down on my tailbone. And a car was coming rapidly and did not stop in time, so I had to get him out, waiting for the medic unit to get there, and I had to do it by myself.
Yeah. You went right after that, you went right into the emergency room, or how did that?
Yeah, went to the hospital, and then I was told, the orthopedic surgeon in Palm Springs told me, you can never be a fireman again. I had too much lower lumbar, too much damage to it to have a job that's lifting people.
Yeah. When you came out here, you started exploring all around. So one of the places you explored was the Salton Sea. And could you tell a little bit about that? Why that fascinated you so?
Well, in the beginning, that was probably my number one attraction initially. I came out here with 2 or 3 friends from Pomona, starting at like 14, 15, 16 years old. And we were fishing, duck hunting, and riding our dirt bikes and so on. And some of the dirt bike stuff was in the sand dunes where a lot of these country clubs are now in North Palm Desert.
There was a big culture of dirt bikes. A lot of the guys would go up there, right?
It was a pretty big deal, yeah.
Yeah, could you say more about that? I mean,
yeah, from the air, some of the aerial photos looked like ants on an anthill. I mean, we were everywhere. It was fun. It was a fun thing to do, and so that was one of the recreations. And so between target shooting, fishing, motorcycles, hiking, all that kind of stuff, everything outdoors. I mean, Palm Desert, the Coachella Valley had everything I liked.
Absolutely.
When I worked at the fire department, I worked with a gentleman by the name of Tom McAbee, a herpetologist from UCLA. Tom and I were actually hired on the same day, and he had a degree, snakes and lizards. And then Palm Desert, or the naturalists found out we had an endangered species here, Uma inornata, Coachella Valley Fringe-toed lizard. And Tom was an expert in that, so he was hired, and basically it went back and forth between developers and between the Nature Conservancy, and the agreement was for the developers to agree on a boundary, and boundary on that side, like the CV Preserve, and then would be preserved forever, which it's supposed to be, and then everything on this side could be developed. So that was the precursor for all of the country clubs along Country Club Drive. Tom and I used to go out and collect those lizards off duty from the fire department early in the morning, and then relocate them for those developments.
They were called fringe-toed lizards?
Uma inornata, scientific name, Coachella Valley fringe-toed lizard, endangered species. And he was the expert in that, and I just went along because it was fun to do.
How big are those?
They're about 11 or 12 inches long. I think the books say 11. It looks like an iguana on steroids. It's kind of a heavy-duty thing, and most people are familiar with the white desert iguana. Very similar to that, only a much wider body.
Are they mean?
Pardon?
Are they mean?
No, I grabbed a whole bunch of them when we were relocating them. Like a lot of things, they'll bite if you give them a chance, but these are fairly docile. And we relocated hundreds of them from what is now North Palm Desert to the area that is now the CV Preserve. The lands that they could do those lands. Yeah, the lands could be developed then.
The fire department. How long were you actually at the Indio Fire Department?
From 1973 to 1989.
16 years.
Yeah, and probably one of the biggest events that I'd really like to get on record because there's not too. You read very little about it. Was Tropical Storm Kathleen, September 10th of 1976. I was on duty at the headquarters station. I was working with Jack Furr, captain, and we received a call from Palm Desert. And it was actually North Palm Desert or South Palm Desert up by the Living Desert. and an elderly woman said, "Can you boys come over and help me?" I said, "Ma'am, what's wrong?" And she said, "Well, I heard a loud noise, like a jet aircraft, and I opened my front door, and the water was about 4 feet deep, and I couldn't close my door." She ended up being, I believe, 84 years old, and I couldn't close my front door. So I had to open my back door because the water was getting too deep in my house. And I said, and I'm in Indio, and it was dry there. The storm came around from behind, hit Palm Desert, and then it hit Indio. So we're talking to her thinking, how can that be?
Yeah.
But the storm came in from the other direction. And so I said, "Where are you now, ma'am?" She said, I'm standing on my kitchen table." And she was so cool. The thing I'll never forget about this, she said, "Oh, there goes my good lamp." So the floodwaters were coming in the front door, going out the back door, and she was describing pieces of furniture that were floating out the back door. And that was just a mile or two above us.
So you heard this story of this storm somewhere that you didn't really understand because you were in dry area.
Correct. It came in from the coastal area and it hit Palm Desert first. We were dry when she made the first call. We didn't have any flooding. So we're thinking, and we go outside, and about 15 minutes later, I had the busiest 24-hour shift of my life.
So how long before it was, you talked to her and there was water there, and then you realized, here it comes, like 15 minutes?
Yes. Yeah. The flooding, the rains and heavy wind started about 15 minutes later, and then about an hour later, Jack Furr and I started getting calls that people are trapped in intersections. And we rolled out, we had a mini pumper. It's a fast attack, which was a new thing at the time. And it's supposed to get to the fires quicker. Well, the mini pumper is the size of a large pickup truck. And so that, as soon as we hit the street, it flooded out. So Jack and I walked back, we got the second engine, which was a standard size engine that you see today. The second engine, the water was about 6 to 8 feet deep at one intersection. That one died. We walked back to the station.
Again?
Oh yeah, a second one died. Then we went and got the aerial ladder, which Indio just got in 1975. Here we were in 76 having this flood, and in 75, and the aerial had a real high chassis, and the motor was high. So we could drive, we were driving in very deep water, doing water rescues.
Mm-hmm. Boy, what a story that, you must have been exhausted by the time.
Yeah, that, I've always, a lot of people said, boy, you need to get this on record because the communications were down, newspapers weren't able to get enough information on it. We ran 126 calls, I think, and everything was wet. There was no communications, and at the end of a 24-hour shift, we were so tired, and we just went one call from another. We don't even remember what we did. All we remember is we were constantly going to intersections, pulling people that were trapped in cars, pulling them out and putting them on high ground. Quite an event.
So that particular call lasted for 24 hours?
Oh yeah, and it continued into the next day because flooding continued, basements flooded, property damage everywhere. So the actual stuff we were doing was probably about 24 hours worth. And then the floodwater started tapering off, and it finally calmed down, but it was two busiest days of my life were both fire service, Van Ryn, Vietnam on a rocket mortar attack one night, and then City of Indio on September 10th of 1976.
How long does it take a storm to go through something like that?
This was a 3-day storm. It was originally Hurricane Kathleen down in Mexico, came around the coast, weakened a little bit. It was still tropical storm, almost hurricane status when it hit us. And it washed everything out. And like I say, Indio, no communications, all the roads, bridges, everything was washed out. Quite an event. And Palm Desert had another one in, I believe, 77 and 79, which led to us getting the Palm Desert Storm Channel, which is the big storm channel right above us by Bighorn and going down. Mm-hmm. So that pretty much protects all the property on the south end now.
Mm-hmm. Is there some kind of plan for the north end, or That's not in the plan.
They're working on it.
They are.
Yeah, after the last storm we had, a couple of storms. And yeah, it's in the plans, and the council's working on it, and they're probably going to be talking about it tonight, I would say, at the council meeting.
Was it
Yeah, June 28th of 1992 at 4:58 in the morning, not that I remember, Joshua Tree Landers quake initially came in at a 7.6. It was downgraded to a 7.3. And that was noteworthy for here, even though technically it was 50 air miles away.
Yeah.
The impressive, and a couple of years later, I'm reading facts and figures on it. There was a right lateral strike slip displacement of 17 to 21 feet, and Old Woman Springs Highway buckled 6 to 7 feet up, and the shock wave was traveling 2 miles per second.
Yeah.
So that article, I know a little bit about geology, and I think that is incredible. So in 25 seconds, it hit Palm Desert, and the shock wave, it showed that this area was hit by about a 6.5. I was at my house at the time.
Yeah. Was that the one in India?
No, I was actually in Palm Desert at the time, up by the Living Desert. And that shook my house so severely that it shook me to the ground the first time, and I'm looking up at my ceiling, and there was about an 18-inch sway back and forth. And I'm thinking like a fireman, well, there goes my plumbing, my electrical, my concrete. I'm thinking, I'm losing all of this stuff. And I had no property damage from that. And I believe there was very little in this valley.
I was wondering about that.
But in Joshua Tree Landers, the Joshua Tree Bowl had a partial collapse. And there was some property damage. A lot of roads were damaged, misplaced, and buckled, and so on. But very little damage here in the valley, even though it supposedly was about a 6.5.
Now, did you experience any other kind of major earthquake like that, or is that the main one that you would say?
That was the biggest one since I've been here. And like I say, that was 50 miles away, but it was the biggest as far as affecting this area. There's been a number of other ones, but that's the only one that sticks in my mind.
All of Southern California was out of power, or?
Yeah, that was real interesting. I thought, well, I'm gonna find out where this is. It was before Google, and you could locate it. And so I turned on the TV, and Eyewitness News Los Angeles said, quote, "All of Southern California is without power." And I thought, well,
how did you get
I'm watching it on TV. What's going on here? And then 2 years later, I was with TV Tokyo. I was filming for tourism. I was with TV Tokyo, and a gentleman by the name of Miles Barrett, who runs a bunch of the wind turbines out there, he said, yeah, a lot of people don't know this, but the reason the Coachella Valley had power during the Joshua Tree Landers quake when Los Angeles was out is when those lines went down to LA, the wind energy, it happened to be a windy morning, fed back into the Coachella Valley. So we had power and Los Angeles didn't. So that was a little quirk that very few people know about.
How many fire stations are there in the Coachella Valley?
I don't know that today. Okay. When I started, Indio was 16,000 people, and I believe it's approaching 90,000 now. And I believe they have 3 stations. They merge with the county, and I don't know the answer to that one. There's a bunch of them though.
So you actually retired from the India Fire Department after your injury, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I worked with Desert Adventures for 10 years. Then I worked with Evan Truby at Big Wheel Tours for 10 years. And I have to say, it's talking about 2 different jobs, night and day. In the fire service, I was seeing people, every person I saw was having their worst day. Somebody, a drowning, a fire, something went wrong, traffic collision or whatever. And in tourism, you got people from all over the world here. All the big cities, all the rich big city people, and they're on a tour, and they're just looking around thinking, boy, this is the best thing we've ever seen. Many of the people that I've had on tours ended up moving to the Coachella Valley. Many. 1 or 2 years later, they would call me. They have my business card. Bruce, a good real estate agent here. We love this place. We absolutely love it. Okay. And I did my own little informal survey over the years. And I asked hundreds, maybe 1,000 people, what is your favorite thing about Palm Desert and about the Coachella Valley? Because a lot of these people were out of the Marriott, and they say, we feel safe here, the view of the mountains, the natural features, the hiking. I mean, you look all around us, and we have national parks and the Tram and the Indian Canyons and Joshua Tree and the Salton Sea. We have so many things. And they would say, you know, you have all the best natural features in the world, and yet these restaurants are only 10 minutes away from us. You have the finest restaurants too. So their general thing was, they're seeing some of the most beautiful scenery in the world, and yet when they get back off the Jeep at 5 p.m., they have a 6 p.m. appointment at one of the finest restaurants in the world. So they were very impressed with that. They always said they felt safe here, and what was remarkable to me from other cities, they always said, this area is so clean. It's so clean and neat compared to other cities. So that's a compliment for us.
Could you mention some of the nationalities that came through?
All over.
Really?
Everywhere. A lot of Asia, and some of it depended on the economy. In the early 90s, Japan was doing real well. So we had a lot of the Japanese groups, and that was very entertaining. But a lot of Europeans here, just Middle East, just everywhere. I mean, probably every country in the world. And for me, someone who, my only traveling was all expenses paid to Vietnam, you know, I get to learn about their countries, all these other countries that I might have been interested in before. And very interesting experience.
Did you have to have an interpreter sometimes?
We had a couple of guides that spoke different languages. We had one that could speak German, Swiss German. Quick funny story about that. When I had TV Tokyo with me, I was doing a science tour. None of them spoke English, and I had the head science professor of Tokyo University with me. And okay, there's a creosote, there's a rattlesnake, and there was no communication. And then so finally I said, and that plant over there is Laurea tridentata, Laurea divaricata, creosote. And the professor, Laurea divaricata. So the scientific names that Tom McAbee taught me many moons ago came into play when I did tourism.
That's fun. Tell me, okay, this Tokyo, what do you call it now?
TV Tokyo.
TV Tokyo. They focused on the Coachella Valley at one point. Is that?
Yeah. Mainly the science aspect of the Coachella Valley, and not so much tourism. I also did the BBC One, the BBC Two travel channel. Wish You Were Here. I did a lot of different travel programs for Palm Springs tourism. So most of those were focused on the tourism aspect, scenery and tourism, restaurants and things like that. TV Tokyo was mainly science.
What were their interests besides? Yeah, what were their main interests? TV Tokyo.
Well, you know, the mystique, rattlesnakes, and we had a little funny incident. We're in Joshua Tree, and had probably the TV Tokyo crew had probably about 10 people all together, and a very large gopher snake went across the road in front of us. There was traffic coming, and the cars were about to hit this gopher snake, and normally you don't handle things in a national park, but the snake was going to get run over. So I ran out, I grabbed the snake, and it bit me, and I threw it off to the side, got it off the side of the road, and by the time they sent me a segment, I got to watch TV Tokyo, and it appeared that they said, our guide Bruce live captured a rattlesnake, and so I always thought that was kind of fun.
You mentioned something about putting them in a 5-gallon plastic tub. How did you?
Yeah, Tom McAbee, when we were collecting for UCLA, this is in the 70s, they were doing anti-venom studies on venom, and we had a permit to live capture 5 or 6 different species of snakes. Tom had the scientific background. He used me because I was an outdoors guy. I knew all the locations. I was a hiker, and he'd show me a picture, and a red rattlesnake, Crotalus ruber, and he said, "Where are these?" I said, oh, there's a bunch right at the base of Palm Springs. There's some canyons up there that have a bunch. So, and how about this one? I said, oh, those are down by Mecca. And so he used me as a locator.
Oh.
So, a funny story. Don't know if I should tell it, but I will. We were catching snakes one night out by northeast of Indio. And again, folks, we had a permit. And we had a large number of sidewinders, Crotalus cerastes. And we had them in a 55-gallon tub in the back of his truck. And we were firefighters at the time also. So we're coming back, and we were just wearing shorts and tennis shoes. It's like midnight, and a car pulled out in front of us, and Tom had to slam on the brakes. And when he slammed on the brakes, the tub of rattlesnakes turned over and was loose in his blazer. So we had probably about 40 rattlesnakes loose in his car. So we're running around, we're capturing these things and trying to get them back in the tub. And then somebody called the police, who we knew all the police officers. Somebody called the police and said, there's two crazy guys around, they're running all around their car. We don't know what they're doing, but they're up to something. So Sergeant Davis came out, we knew him, and oh, come on, it's you two, what are you doing? And Tom said, oh, we're just getting a bunch of rattlesnakes out of my car. So anyway.
Well, do you put all the rattlesnakes, by the way, in one tub, right? You don't have to go in a separate tub.
Correct.
What do they do? I mean, what do they do with each other? Are they just hang out together?
Usually, we would say professional courtesy. That they usually, I never witnessed one of the snakes biting another one. Usually, they're all in the same boat, and they just huddle down and ride it out.
What kind of what did you use to protect yourself when returning those snakes to the plastic tubs? What did you use? A mitt or?
We had tongs.
You had tongs.
We were pretty good about handling them. Not perfect. We had one mistake, but we could hand capture them. We were fast enough, and we did have gloves like falconer's gloves, animal handling gloves on. Sometimes just pick them up by the tail, and sometimes if we were quick enough, we could get them by the neck. But we'd done this so many times that we were comfortable with it, but that's when mistakes happen.
Yeah. Were they scared? Were they like frightened, or did they just...
The snakes?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Anytime they rattle their tails, they're in the defensive mode, and they would get up in a strike posture and have a couple of coils ready to go out, and they'd be rattling their tails away, and we'd either use tongs or use the gloves and grab them, and we had a pretty good safety record considering we probably caught over 500 over a number of years.
Yeah, let's hear about the living desert.
Okay, in 1973, 74, Karen Sossman, she had started a couple of years earlier. It was very small at the time, just some small cages and not too many animals, not nearly as big as it is now. And Tom McAbee, herpetologist, he heard that the animal care person, who was Bob Claybrook at the time, I believe probably Karen Sossman called Tom, knowing his background, said, we need somebody to help us with our animals. Bighorn sheep, coyotes, red-tailed hawks, we had a bunch of stuff. And Tom was on another shift at the time. He said, would you help me? I said, sure, that sounds interesting. It was volunteer. And so we had a bunch of rattlesnakes, roadrunners, red-tailed hawks, golden eagles, coyotes, bobcats, we had everything. So Tom and I exclusively, for a few weeks there, while Bob was sick, we were taking care of all these things. And from a little boy, I always was interested in animals, so that kind of worked out for me. And Tom had the science, so we got him through that period until Bob could come back. But working with the critters was quite interesting.
Explain why that's interesting. Yeah.
The behavior, the concept most people have, I'll tell you right now, in defense of coyotes, and some people won't like me for saying this, but they're actually quite afraid of people. Mm-hmm. And I had we had five in underground enclosure. And Karen told me at the time, when you go in, they feel very threatened. If you're face to face with them, mm-hmm. they feel threatened and they'll go crazy. So you have to cower. So I had to take their food bowls. I would kneel down and I would literally go in the cage backwards. In other words, I'm acting scared of them so they wouldn't go crazy. And then I would go in and clean the cages and feed them. But they had tremendous fear of me to where, I never felt threatened at all. And I went in there many times. There was one critter there that wanted to kick my you-know-what a few times. And of all the things I had, hawks, eagles, owls, roadrunners, red-tailed hawks, and so on, there was one great horned owl there that was the meanest, meanest critter on the whole piece of property. And the second day I went in, I realized, wait a minute, I'm going to take all my firefighter's gear. So I took my heavy coat, my gloves, I put on falconer's gloves because this thing would try to hit me in the face, and put on falconer's gloves and put my face shield, helmet, face shield, everything. And this thing would just come after me and I'd hold my hand up and it'd hit me and go down to the ground. It did that 2 or 3 times. And then finally we came to terms and everything was okay. So, but the coyotes aren't nearly as bad as people think. Rattlesnakes aren't nearly as bad as people think. They always try to stay away from you. Most people, the typical person that is bitten by a rattlesnake were people, young males that are playing around with them like Tom and I. That's who usually gets it. But now we were semi-professional, but it's usually young males that are taunting them. They will take a lot of guff before they strike. The venom that they have, what a lot of people don't think about, that's their saliva. And if the hemotoxin or neurotoxin, they need that to inject into the little animal so they can eat. So if they indiscriminately bite Bruce 2 or 3 times, they're not going to be able to eat for a couple of days because they have to regenerate the venom. So they tend to withhold to the point where one of the articles I read said that the vast majority of snake bites, I believe 2/3, are dry strikes. In other words, they'll hit you, but they don't envenomate either because of clothing or because the snake doesn't want to. So the fangs might make a puncture mark, but very little goes in, and they tend to hold back. I was envenomated one time, but very small amount. Tom and I had milked the snake, and honestly, we were goofing around with the snake, and we were too comfortable and taking turns capturing and milking different snakes. And fortunately, the one that got me, we had just removed the venom from. We had just milked it, and I grabbed it like we had done 100 times, and it had just enough that it turned around, and I watched it in slow motion, its little eyeballs, and burning sensation. And I showed up at the ER, and of course all the ER nurses knew me, and Bruce, what happened this time? But it was not a serious event.
What is milking a rattlesnake? What is that?
You put their fangs over a glass and over the rim of glass, and then you massage the side. And usually they'll do it once the fangs are out. Usually it's just like milking a cow. At that point, here it comes. And then if they're not giving up any venom, then you massage the side.
And they use that for
a lot of studies for dissolving blood clots, and I haven't followed in the last few years, but I know some of the snake venoms, many of the medicines today with neurotoxic properties or hemotoxic properties are being used in different medicines. At the time, they were using it as a clot-busting drug.
Coyotes and other animals that were at the living desert, how did they get there in the first place? The people?
Usually they were, one set that we got in where a construction crew had dug into the side of a hill and brought 3 little puppies in, and couldn't locate the mother anywhere. So people were always showing up at the door. Oh, I found this, I found this, I found that. And then sometimes they're hit by cars, and then we try to rehab them. Just different types of injuries. I mean, we would never live capture a healthy one. It was always one that had some misfortune, and then we put it in our care. And then if it wasn't if we couldn't rehab it, then we just kept it.
Was there a vet involved in that, or?
Yeah, at the time, they have full-time vets there now, but at the time we just had to go out at our mercy financially and ask different vets to help us out.
How do you compare the living desert that you knew at that point to the living desert of today?
Oh, it's 10 times bigger, probably 20 times bigger. Gift shop. When I was there, it was just a small, I could almost do it in my backyard now. Just a small area with multiple cages, flyways for the birds, and a little underground den for coyotes and stuff. And now it's just a big, expansive, it's much, much larger.
What about that area where they have the train set up?
Yeah, I don't know much about that, although there's a lot of railroad history in the Coachella Valley. Yeah, I was there before that.
I see.
And I was there during Tropical Storm Kathleen, or I should say, Jack Furr and I were running all the calls in Indio, and then on the days off, we were still volunteering at the Living Desert. And the problem we had then, Tom and I, the sheep were on the same hill that they are now, and there was a chain link fence around the sheep. But Kathleen completely washed out the road. There was a deep gully in between the feeding area where we had all the food and where the sheep were. So Tom and I, just like you see in the old days, we had to make a yoke with a big stick and 2 5-gallon pails of feed and hike across the wash to feed the animals. And then we ended up rebuilding the trails and stuff like that. Another noteworthy thing, one of the articles I read said Karen Sossman's rain gauge overflowed at 22 inches. 22 inches. Now she was up 74 a little ways, up Carrizo, in the Carrizo area. But her rain gauge, so that tells you the rainfall amounts. And rainfall amounts here, all the gauges were overflowing, so there probably isn't many accurate reports on actual rainfall for that. I always want to get one comment in here. Every time I hear the news, biggest storm in 500 years. They say this about every 3 years, and I'm thinking, oh, people, you don't know what you're talking. Yeah, absolutely. You don't know what you're talking about. And Kathleen was the biggest one. I'm here to tell you, I've lived through a bunch of them, and we've had significant storms, but Kathleen was the big event in the valley.
Palm de Pines.
Yeah.
When you look down, and there's a house down in there. Do you know where?
That's Bighorn Institute.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, that's the Bighorn Institute. Now, that's the most obvious house if you're up at a perspective. Now, there's some other structures in there, but the most obvious one is the Bighorn Institute, to my knowledge. I believe that's what you're saying.
Yeah. I wondered, how did that survive in there? When that was a lot of water was in that area.
Yeah, the building that's there now was constructed. I'm pretty sure it was constructed after Kathleen. I'm not certain about that, but I think it was after Kathleen. So, but you're right. That's right in the path of the storm. If that's Palm Valley Storm Channel wasn't built. When
you take people now on a hike, what's the favorite hike that people enjoy the most?
There's so many different ones.
How do you decide?
What I tell people, let's look at the weather. The blessing of the Coachella Valley and the Palm Desert area is you can literally choose your weather. If you want to hike in the snow, we could take off in an hour and be hiking in the snow.
Funny.
If you wanted to hike and see thousands of birds, waterfowl, we could drive an hour that way to the Salton Sea. If you wanted to hike and see the most interesting landscape, true badlands and landscape, Painted Canyon, Box Canyon region of the Mecca Hills. Yeah. So the CB Preserve, a number of oases, natural fan palm oases. It's like our own little tropical island. You're in the middle of a dry desert, and then all of a sudden you find an oasis. And those are fault block oases, and basically water's coming up out of the San Andreas.
Is that the San Andreas Fault?
San Andreas Fault. If from an aerial perspective, if you trace the fault line from the Mecca Hills going up towards Desert Hot Springs, there's 34 natural fan palm oases there. And so you can see them if you go on Google Earth and follow it down. If you know where the fault trace is, some of them are just a few palms, and some of them are hundreds. And then you've got, of course, 1,000 palms, which is not 1,000, but it's got a bunch.
With the Landers earthquake, did that have? What was the connection between that and the San Andreas Fault? Was there also a fault up there?
That's a very good question. They have what's called the Joshua Tree Landers fault. Now, they say these things aren't related. I'm not a geologist. I question that. We ourselves did not have a significant event other than the aftershocks from there. What was interesting, Big Bear had a 6.8 2 hours later, and they say it was not related. Now, I call bull on that one because the 2 hours apart, the two biggest quakes we've had in 10 to 20 years, 2 hours apart, and they're telling me they're not related. I think they were related. But
what if there's an earthquake here and people want to know what's going on, where would they go right away?
Some of the fire department sites can identify it, and Google has, I believe, inner search recent Southern California earthquakes.
Okay.
I'm quite surprised. Sometimes I will do that, and in less than 2 minutes it shows the epicenter.
Oh, that's interesting.
And sometimes it takes about 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. And you probably know the southeastern end of the Salton Sea a couple of years ago had swarms of they had like 2,000 earthquakes between like 1 and 3 or 1 and 4 or something like that. And it's interesting. They're doing a whole lot of drilling down there right now, and so may or may not be related. That particular area of the Salton Sea where they're putting all the geothermal in now is the San Andreas Fault trace does this in that area. It comes up from Mexico, and then in that particular area it makes a bend as quakes often do. So then there's cross faults. So seismically, I believe there that you can hit magma at about 1,700 feet deep, which is very shallow, considering Earth's crust like 20 to 60 miles thick in a lot of areas, and so that's pretty shallow, and that's why the geothermal people like it there.
Do you think that drilling there compromises the possibility of an earthquake?
There's certainly questions on that. I know they're putting some pretty big ones. One of or the largest geothermal plant from Australia, owned by Australians, is going in there now. And so a lot of drilling. I would say it's more than happenstance that we're having those swarms there and there's so much activity down there. But on the other hand, it is at a point of the fault where there's a lot of stuff going on. I'm working with Erica, Crystal, Evan, Jan, and Ellen. Don't know if I can mention last names, but I won't. And we're kind of politically active locally, and a great group of people. I met them about 5 years ago, and started working with Erica and Crystal and Ellen, and then we're active in local politics, and it's all good stuff. Where do we need a stop sign? Safety things. What do we need to worry about? What do we need to be concerned about? That's been rewarding for me because I'm 75 now. And I started when I was about 70, and I was starting to think, okay, Bruce, a whole bunch about the desert stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to activate a different area of your brain. And so when I first started working with this group, the Palm Desert Neighborhoods group, I thought, well, this is going to be boring, but I have to tell you, it was fascinating because the people I've met along the way, city council members, the people I met along the way, fascinating, interesting, all different walks of life, something that a country boy or a fireman or a military person would never see otherwise unless you got involved in politics. It's been very rewarding for me. The desert and exploring is still my first love, but the politics is quite interesting.
What's something about the desert that would surprise people? Is there some kind of, yeah?
Nocturnal life. How many critters are out there at night? And a lot of people, you can take a trip. Say it's a 100-degree day. The nighttime temperatures, 80 or 90, are optimum. A lot of these critters are nocturnal and crepuscular, active at twilight, and you can go all day and not see anything except the white desert iguana, the big white lizards you see running across the road, and maybe a white-tailed antelope ground squirrel, which is very heat tolerant. And people say, well, there's nothing alive out here. Well, they're underground. They're in burrows, they're underground, they're in rock crevices and stuff. And you go out at night like Tom and I used to, and there's critters everywhere. You take a spotlight, and coyotes and raccoons and badgers and kit foxes, one of my favorites. A lot of kit foxes out here, more than they say, and snakes, lizards, all kinds of stuff.
Do people have to be thinking about that when they go out, on the golf course?
Yeah, some of the rattlesnakes are nighttime critters, and I'm trying to think. I don't believe I've ever heard of a golfer having trouble with one of those things, but they probably have.
What's your connection with the golf courses? How many could you give us a little history of the
Yeah,
golf courses?
I haven't kept up with it lately, but I know at one time there was about 120 golf courses.
In the Coachella Valley.
In the Coachella Valley. And golf course defined is kind of tough, because Sinatra and some of these other people had their own little 3-hole, 6-hole, 9-hole. So what is a golf course, And so, but 18-hole real golf courses, I believe there's about 120. My uncle was a World Senior Masters golf title winner, and just an amateur, but he was one of the top golfers in the world, and he donated a large sum of money to College of the Desert, and to build the museum and the institute there, Victor LeBeau, for the institute. So the Golf Institute and the museum at College of the Desert. That's where the driving range is now. It's got his name on the front and a bunch of statues.
The one that's on Fred Waring?
Yeah, it's on Fred Waring, right by the college, right next to the college.
What's the Golf Institute? Is that something that's...
Training. Tony Manzoni ran that for a long time, training. They had one of the highest win rates of any college on golfers for that level, college level. And so they did very well on that. And my uncle ran a number of Senior Masters golf classics out of Palm Desert, Ironwood Country Club, and Indian Wells. And so that was his passion. Like mine is the desert, his was the golf. And so, and he actually had a house in Shadow Mountain area for a period of time. And then he donated money to the Golf Institute of the Desert and the Golf Museum. And so.
Is the Golf Museum in that structure that's
Yeah,
on? Okay.
Yes it is, yeah.
And who owns that property over there now? COD owns that?
COD, I'm pretty sure is the owner of it. And then they donated for the buildings. And of course, as soon as you make a donation, they can do whatever they want with it. So ended up being a driving range and some other things. And there is a commercial shop, t-shirts and stuff like that.
It's done very well over there. It's really sweet.
Yeah.
If people were thinking of moving here, what would you advise them?
I would tell them it would be the best thing they do in their entire lives. I have no qualms about it. I had a client one time tell me, Bruce, you really love the desert. If I'd get, and this was back when $1 million was a lot of money. If I'd give you $1 million right now, would you leave here? I said, no, I wouldn't. I'm staying right here. This is my happy place. I said, the finest restaurants in the world. I can go any direction I want. My 4-wheel drive. and hike, and you know, in 15 or 20 minutes you're away from people, solitude, nighttime stars, and it's just it's a wonderful place.
What about the summer?
Summer's tough, and I always tell them, and there's going to be 3 or 4 months, at least 3 months, and sometimes it varies. Last summer was particularly bad, but summertime's tough. There's no getting around that. You know, a lot of people go to Idlewild and Big Bear, or they do that, go visit relatives somewhere, Oregon, Washington, or go to a cooler climate. But summertime is tough, and I always preface, you know, when they ask me, if you can tough out 3 months, the other 9 months will be heaven. It's the best place in the world, in my opinion.
What would you say to young people coming up?
I like the phrase, it's better to burn out than to rust. And
keep going.
you know, there's a whole lot of days I think I'm tired and my back hurts, but I think, you know what? I haven't explored that oasis in a while. Yeah. And I'm going to drink a cup of coffee and take some Tylenol, and I'm going to get out there and explore it. And I'm always happy that I did. To me, this area is heaven. Again, finest medical facilities, finest restaurants, and 30 minutes away, you can pick your habitat. You can pick your air temperature for hiking. You can pick snow, or you can pick warm weather. It's just, for me, it's heaven.